Sometimes it's hard to remember that the studio that developed The Last of Us Part 2, one of the most realistic, complex, detailed, expansive, and engaging games ever, also created games like Crash Bandicoot and Jak and Daxter, which I suppose you could argue are complex, detailed, expansive, and engaging in their own way too. I'd bet that you'd identify as either a Crash Bandicoot fan or a Jak and Daxter fan depending on which console was your first, PlayStation or PlayStation 2. For me, it was PlayStation 2. I remember the Christmas we got it, and I still remember most of the games me and my brother would play. I'd lose, but he cheated, so whatever. I remember them because they seem to have left an indelible impression on me. And I still have them in the PlayStation 2 we played them on. So I'm still able to boot up the old girl and play one of my old favorites. 20-year-old technology. No yellow light or red ring of death here.
Damn it!
Hey, it's 20 years old, give it a break. This game's in the PlayStation Store anyway. There we go. Welcome to a world of eco, lurkers, and whatever Jak is. Wait a minute. He's human?
What?
Jak and Daxter was a pretty simple platformer with some combat and collectibles, not too incredibly remarkable. The main form of money is precursor orbs. There are also power cells that you can find throughout the world and collect for completing various tasks. You can also buy them from villagers and precursor oracles. Apparently, precursor orbs are far more valuable than power cells because all those villagers want is the cash.
I would offer you a power cell in return.
I'll give you a power cell.
And I'll give you a power cell.
It's worth a power cell if you bring her back to me.
I've got a power cell that says you can do it.
If by any chance you're interested in making a contribution to my re-election campaign, I might be willing to part with yet another power cell.
Money, please.
And the platforming is pretty generic, but it's solid. Jump, double jump, and spin. Go from one ledge to the next.
Break it down in terms of... Okay. I think I'm getting you.
There are a few pretty bad boss battles and weird flies to find, but that's about it. It really isn't too It really isn't too hard. It's really not that... I hate this game. It was the first game Naughty Dog made for the PlayStation 2, and at the time it was praised for its graphics and animations, so it seems they've always been pretty good at that. I think what made this game really remarkable was its characters and story. The plot could have been kept simple. Find a way to turn Daxter back into a human. But very quickly it expands to be something more. Evil lurkers have been encroaching on the village, and around the world dark eco is popping up. Sages are going missing, power is cut off, monsters, robots.
Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
And someone's got to do something about it. And of course that someone is you. Like many games of this era, the camera is wonky and the controls were sticky, and if you play it now, it does show its age. But there's still that classic charm that comes from the characters. Samos is the first voice you hear, and I still remember this monologue 20 years after I first heard it.
Who were the precursors? What was their purpose? And why did they vanish? I have asked the plants, but they do not remember. The plants have asked the rocks, but the rocks do not recall. Even the rocks do not recall.
Devious little monsters here.
Then there's his daughter Kira, who, if we're being honest, doesn't exactly match up with today's standards of video game representation. But very quickly the game sets you off into this remarkably open world. There are some tricks like canyons and elevators to load the next area, but other than that there aren't any actual loading screens. This is quite impressive considering its size and scope. There's about 14 different locations to explore sprouting off the main Sage's huts. Sentinel Beach, Spooky Jungle, Misty Island, Fire Canyon, Precursor Basin, Boggy Swamp, Lost Precursor City, Mountain Pass, Spider Cave, Snowy Mountains, Lava Tube, and the Citadel. In any other game, these locations would be levels that you must complete to continue the game. Here, each separate place can be accessed at any time. You can go to a location, do one thing, and then leave to eventually come back again. This is a very early open world game at a time where open world games were just starting to find their footing, allowing you to do things at your own pace. The bottlenecks here are imposed by the story. Each of the Sage's huts and surrounding areas are only accessible after collecting enough power cells to advance through the Fire Canyon, or power the machine to lift the rock the giant monster used to block anyone from coming up and attacking him while he continues to send a barrage of boulders to terrorize the small village. But once everything is opened up, you can literally travel from one end of the world to the other, without stopping or facing a loading screen, from the beach all the way up to the snowy mountains. In the village you begin in, you meet all the different citizens, and they're all unique. From their voice acting and humor to their character design. Which, okay, they're all human, and that, like, are they from the distant past, or are they from the future? I mean, if they're on a completely different planet, then why are they still called human? Did they evolve? Why are their ears so big? Is Samus a human too? Or is he like Gandalf in the Maiars? There's some deep Silmarillion of lore I have to dive into here.
I'm confused.
The most important thing about this game, though, is that it's fun. It gives you more freedom than most platforming games. And yes, looking back on it 20 years later, it does look old and it has the wonky camera and bad controls like I said, but it's no less fun. Some games are hurt by their age because you remember them differently than they actually are. Jak and Daxter is a game I remember being exactly the same. Playing on a PlayStation 4 is effectively no different than playing on a PlayStation 2. And I'm having no less fun now. It's one of those games I remember every moment, probably because of the sounds. It's very Pavlovian. It makes me think of where I was when I first played it and how stupid that jump was. I totally made that. It's the perfect example of why an older game doesn't need to be remade, but just made available and playable on current-gen hardware. Nothing is really changed, which just proves the original's impressive design. In 2009, after the release of Uncharted 2, Naughty Dog split into two teams, one to develop Uncharted 3 and the other to make a new game. It's no wonder that the first idea they had was to reboot Jak and Daxter. Of course, they totally bailed and made some other game, I don't even remember which one, probably something really lame. I think everyone has that one game that they played as a kid that they still remember in incredibly vivid detail. Every move, every level, every song, every sound. In fact, sound has been linked to memory like smell. This is that game for me. I remember everything, from the sound of Jak falling down a pit, to the lurker shark attack, to that stupid fisherman as you catch his fish.
Here comes a big one!
And all the different ways Jak and Daxter celebrate when they get a power cell. As it's been ported twice to new hardware, maybe a little bit of that magic has rubbed off. But I'm glad we still get to enjoy this game and all it has to offer, if only to marvel at how far we've come in a relatively short amount of time. Imagine how far we'll go. Maybe we'll actually get a game that knows when I make a jump. That is crap! I totally made that! That's ridiculous. This game is so stupid.